Utie oha extra punk no. Needs FM.
US and a person, Edin Como. After Commander Kennedy, MD, Yamuahu.
Majodo, wait a few hours, some Mahoma. Yanko Pomboy, and buying on COVID-19.
Oye. Wide ranging interview near no by any VA. Now, first of all, dear, you wrote an article reflecting on the World Press Freedom Day. Now, we may need to amplify and clarify certain few naughty points and then have a clear understanding of what you sought to portray. Now, tell us, again, push you, again, motivate you to reflect on the World Freedom Day and not dear and now person achieve by your write up.
Oh, since I'm sure the magazine there, I have always been a fan of the media. Meaning that historically, media, they've played a very big role in emancipation of the world and lifting the voices of the voiceless. If struggles for independence around the world, even struggles about development, the media has been very, very central. Now, in my write-up, the UN established this day in 1993, and the key sentence in the proclamation was that to remind the governments of their commitment to press freedom. In America, the UN once the Winsippi and Ocheka, since Ocheka there, na the young man, now this is the browsers in the thing there. Oh, the biggest threat to media freedom or abide governments intimidating people. Into Ghana, ship bombing of newspaper stations, news reporters are watching home to people are watching home. You can't be there, Tommy Thompson. I'm not the prison, you carry Kuba Kona, Kwesi Pratt, Arunata. We've had some very good journalists. I mean, Lisbeth Ohene, Oye, PAV, and that. You go to me, Bobby, papers to the pioneer, and some radio stations, radio stations, so Oye, Rekumbo, Nesmo, Udine, or friends to Joy FM, in the Oye, Nkofutadawo, Kwame Sefakai, Benefs, and Eduma Oye. But more point in there, the biggest threat to press freedom, and one of the big threats to press freedom, there are a lot of other things out there. It used to be there, was the force, was the enforcer, silence of the press. But you say, more often than not, from force, what from Kofu, they don't understand. Now, they don't even get by their silence. They make them public relations agents in promoting truth and defending bad policies. And in our lives, we've seen a lot of those. But there are other forces that try to control the media. It be organizations, it be private businesses, it be even criminal organizations. And also for all these things, if you are, other things are or control media, it be ideology, it be even tribalism, it be ethnicity, it be allegiance to chiefs. And there are a lot of factors that control media. Now, the Moshe, I had development and to other places one. This is that the media is a very powerful force for our development, but we are not using it well. I'm telling you today, sometimes media, based on your personal experience, you change your view and perspective about the media. Today, Thomas Jefferson, if he had to choose between government without the press and the press without government. We will choose the press without government. But after a few years, you can't believe anything that you see in a newspaper. You know, newspapers now I think the media is an asset. We all have to protect. But my kind of the other issue, or a system kakra the Ghana, the Kukudam journalists or women are Kwame the second, the next, and one. And so, now politicians, it's the only bachelor and now be some pertinent question. Not the Amanabe pressman. For example, Mahama on corruption. It took a British journalist to ask him about, have you ever taken a bribe or have you ever been offered a bribe? Instead of the generalizing, corruption is important in our body politics. Why is it that no Ghanaian journalist had ever asked him that? If Nanadwa, he had been preaching about free SHS for years, but it took a British journalist to ask him, how much would it cost? Have you costed it? And all of a sudden, it was very clear that he hadn't done all of his homework. Why did it take a foreign journalist to do either of these things that I talk about, while we ourselves have very good journalists in our ranks? Is it because of partisanship? Is it because of too much respect for authority? Is it because of bias? And see, as I'm making as I'm able to find there, the media is a treasure. The issue, US, for example, COVID-19 response here. I mean, I don't like the tone of the press sometimes, but without the press, the government would not have handled this thing as well as it has, because the press has been relentless. Even in Nepal, every Sunday, I go and get the New York Times because it has deep, well-researched stories that I don't even sometimes find in the medical journal. And that is the media. Iya Trump can honya nukwer, iyo can honya nukwer, iyo mu ye iwa. I think that the media is a treasure that we must guard, but the garden must start with the media itself. Not just that they need courage. They need courage, but in addition to that, they need integrity. They need to love their country. They need to follow policy rather than politics. And they need to make sure that those who don't have a voice get a voice. And they need to always add from the highest motives and principles of journalism. And in the well-pressed thing, or a few days ago, through all my friends in the media, seven, I encourage you to do better in the name of Ghana, Africa, and mankind.
You appear to support a statement purportedly made by the president of the Ghana Journalists Association, Dr. Roland Afeomoni. That is journalism without fear or favor. How do you want to see journalism, fear or favor used in the Ghanaian terrain?
Oh, sir, in the Ghanaian terrain, quite I ever for dying in there. Ghana, for practical purposes, the civil society organizations are not that loud. If the US, the US government's trying to close down, people are taking them to court, and their judiciary is very strong. Ghana individuals are weak. And the journalists are very, very powerful. And when the people like you can shed light on things. But my point in the people like you, not all of you are acting out of the public interest. There are media people who will support government even if the government is wrong. There are media people who will criticize government even if the government is right. And those things will not help our country. For example, my mama was a small example. If we will later discuss COVID-19. Remember there, when Nanado gave his address about lockdown, he said, we can bring economies back, but we can't bring lives back. And a lot of media people were talking about how this is so brilliant, and even the WHO director is quoting him and all that. Adakabre, I want to make the case there. Our there, that statement was brilliant. And then you turn around and supported Nanado opening up the lockdown when we had not seen decreases in cases. It's been inconsistent, and I'm being very generous when I say that. Because if you were for that sentence, then you wouldn't for the reopening, because the two are inconsistent. Why is it that we didn't see any media person say, but Mr. President, I say me I can, and I'm married, the two are not consistent. And I'm saying that we see that again and again and again. And in actual fact, it is a trait of all Ghanaians, but the press do it to a level that is very bad. All of a sudden, something that is done under NDC is corrupt, but when MPP does it, it's not corrupt. Something done under MPP is corrupt, but when NDC does it, it's not corrupt. I am saying that when those things keep happening, you undermine our faith in the collective wisdom of the media. And I think when you do that, you undermine your own influence.
After Kennedy, about integrity. Now, integrity, how do you sustain it? If you were to be in an environment that majority of it are fanatically aligned to a political party rather to the state Ghana.
Well, and to be honest with you, I have thought about it because, as you and I know, I have suffered from that too. If I was one of those people who always parrot official lines, maybe I will be in a different place. But my argument in there, if we want to build a greater society, a nation that is better than it is now, some people must suffer for blazing the path, for standing in the breach for integrity, even when it is unpopular. That is what Mandela did. If indeed Mandela had done what most South African politicians wanted to do, maybe he wouldn't have ended up in prison, and South Africa would have ended up in a very different place. In the same way, when people like Kwesi Pratt and Haruna Atta and even late Tommy Thompson, may he rest in peace, were taking on the PNDC. If they had looked after about their own safety and said, let me play it safe, we wouldn't be where we are. If people like me maybe had not gone into led demonstrations and gone into Ezra, we wouldn't be where we are. And so my point is that when everybody is doing it, maybe it's too late. It doesn't matter. Leadership is about being brave. It's about when nobody wants to ask the president that, Mr. President, it doesn't make sense, and you ask. When a minister can say, I know that, this is a very prestigious position, but this thing they want me to do, I can't do it and I won't do it, and he will go home. That is what builds great country. And in my life, I always give people, apart from Mandela's own, I give people two examples, both positive and negative. The New York Times is owned by a Jewish family, but they were so tied to the Democrats and FDR that they refused to report stories on the Holocaust. Now they regret it because if they had done it, maybe they would have saved a lot of lives, even though it was unpopular. It would have been a good thing to do. During the Civil War, people of Texas wanted to succeed, and their governor was a guy called Sam Houston. Once succeeding from the U.S. is wrong, he resigned as governor, and as he left, who were him and hooting him. But he said, I am very sure of what I'm doing, so if all of Texas want to succeed, they may succeed. I don't agree with you. Later on, they apologized to him for what they had done to him. Let me give you a third example about acting out of principle. A lot of people talk about Winston Churchill's greatness and all that. When Winston Churchill was going to be prime minister, it was quote unquote not his turn to be prime minister. The one who would have been prime minister was Lord Halifax, who was a member of the House of Lords. Lord Halifax said, we are in the middle of a war. Churchill has a lot of war experience. At this time in Britain's history, Churchill will be a better prime minister
perhaps, Doc, you would agree, say, on that issue of Lord Halifax standing down for Churchill, it was all to do with, say, as a appeasement, and Ubia Ede Juma, and Churchill appeared to have come on top on the basis that he was against appeasement and then pacification, anti-me and Juma, and eventually, he became the most touted British politician to date. How does principle come in?
You do have a point, but you see, in saying that, you've also highlighted standing against what is popular and the current time. Churchill was sounding the alarm about Germany when it was very unpopular to sound that alarm. Everybody was insulting him. Cranky old man, this. Then all of a sudden, the complete appeasement happened, and people said, hey, the old man has been right all along. So even that illustrates the point we are making. And let me give you one more last example. Obama, your audience will see the practical realities. Remember what they said about John Mohammed's brother, about going to Ghana Ports Authority, and he issued 24 checks, and most of them bounced and all that. When I read that, I was very sad. The reason I was sad for Ghana because I have imported things to Ghana before. I imported a car. I walk in there, somebody said, "Look, you go to this bank, you paid your import duty, this is the duty, and you bring us a receipt." We don't even take money. That's what they told me. Their rules are. I'm trying to find out, how is it that somebody else issued checks 20 whatever times for them to bounce, when the rules of the organization are that you are not even supposed to issue a check, and nobody there had the balls to say, "Boss, I know you are the president's brother, but our rules which are here say we are not supposed to take checks." Nobody could say that. That is very sad for our country.
Doc, we are finally on this area. Ma, share once again your terrain, what obtains. Na you also view about it. The states would always be the government with a small g. So government of Ghana with a small g would be the president and the executive branch and the legislative branch and the judiciary. Then also there's a government with a big G, a capital G, that will be, say, the MPP-led government. Enti se obi tenase na ose obeye the journalism broadcasting the Jumani year. You are enjoined. If I were to go back to late 50s, na yeah Santehine, ekase Santehine ne aban entwe manson. Santehine one aban entwe manson. Inti enei otumfo say tutu abebio. Wadi mfinshi eduoson 70 years kwa no. Obekai de ne wofa kan ye say Santehine one aban entwe manson. Same would somebody expect a journalist say, you should always support the government of Ghana programs, GOG programs, with a small g. It is said so long as a GOG program, a jinamuma or mine propagate it. Tell people about it. Let people see the need for it. And objectively, you may bring in criticism here and there. But then you are not enjoined. Say, over support to the government with the capital G, for which a year partisanship. How do you balance your support for government with a small g with that of government with a capital G?
Well, I don't know that you need to balance it because at the end of the day, what is right is what is right. What is wrong is what is wrong. So I think instead of worrying about government with small g and government with large g and parties, I'm just a simple doctor. What is best for Ghana? I always say, people say my party right or wrong, but I say my country is of this. As long as you see that as your premise, you end up being in the right place. And remember, the government with a large G or even the government of a small G, whichever one you are talking about, make mistakes. As a citizen, even as a journalist, you are also a citizen. As a citizen, sometimes your duty is to disagree with your government or, if need be, to oppose your government. For example, there was a time when they talk about, they are bringing this gay curriculum into Ghana, homosexuality, to teach our kids about homosexuality. Yeah, it might be a government program, but if you are a journalist and in good conscience, you think it will not be good for Ghana, you should oppose it. And if you oppose it, yes, sometimes you will suffer from it. You might be ostracized. They will invite you to press conferences or take you on trips or whatever. But so what? As long as you're doing that out of the best motive, then it is the right thing to do. So I don't think you should lose sleep over it. As long as you set your heart, you inform yourself, you read policy. That is what I do. Whatever happens there on COVID-19, for example, I look at what the WHO is saying. I look at CDC. I look at what Britain is saying. I talk to my friends in the medical field. I talk to researchers because I want to find out what the right thing is to do.
Now, still on that area of how to keep a proper balance, if you are to be, we can say, integrity-led broadcaster and as a journalist, here comes the situation. Say yes, we will go through the tangent. Dr. Kennedy Erking, I can do a person who can be at the area, but then you would agree. So since 25 years ago, May 1995, Joy FM Bayi, a state broadcaster no pe ena wo ho, and a preparation all over radio stations almost 500, TV stations 100, newspapers all over baby but especially with the radio stations and the TV stations, though synergy ni nyina beba on the online portals, but then you come out a situation where business entities, politicians own these radio stations and TV stations. And unti wote ha, and I do free say what the way objective. Wote ha, and I do free say we integrity led journalist. But at the end of the day, we comment, we integrity, we objectivity, affect the business of say the owner of the entity. So how are you supposed to be looking everything you say, looking for libel? Can be a company, at the same time looking for the interest of be at the own and also business interest elsewhere, and at the same time so me person me cannot correct. How do you balance it?
How you balance it is the law and morality and your tone. The same thing. Two people can say the same thing. One person will be sued for libel, and the other one will not be sued for libel. I think that the issue you raise is a very valid one because sometimes the owner of your station and either the private businessman has interest that may be run contrary to that of journalism, or maybe he even set up the station to support a particular party. And see, maybe when you are going to work there, it's one of the things that you need to reflect on and decide whether it is an environment that will allow you to practice your profession the way you see it. Maybe if you can't, then you shouldn't work there. The other thing is that I think life is about compromise. The question is where your lines are. We have to have their lines. I remember you said state-owned enterprise. If you recall, in 1979, when they started the executions, ironically, one of the most significant editorials calling the nation to speak up on the executions was written by the state-owned Daily Graphic that had the editorship of Elizabeth Ohene. She was working for the state media, and yet she spoke out against it. I remember in 1982, when we started, now that we are under lockdown, it's very similar to those of us who are a little older. I'm sure you remember when the PNDC, what do they call, curfew was in place. I was a university student, first year university student. I wrote an opinion piece, walked to the Ghana News Agency, It was a statement. The guy read one thing and he said, yes, this is something that the public needs to hear. As he was typing it into his hands were shaking. He just got up and hugged me. The next day, it was back page of the graphic read by GBC. They were all state-owned media people, but they knew that was in the public interest.
Now, we can say your culture and also a bit peculiar to the extent to say, be a business owner, no, broadcasting agency owner, no. Because no, not the baby that you could have, say, a former president call or a president call and says the one was a reporter, and also your story radio tiame. So you begin to ask yourself, say, business owner no momentarily now former president to be a friend no president to be a friend no I refer to bibi a yatwere reporter no so no kura when you well aware of the yatwere reporter no so and can adwene ho. So you ask yourself ediem mu aye na initially what be ma such a former president what be ma such a president when in fact we say ya akola ketwa bi ene bi a one misuse certain words on say the porter.
Yeah, and actually, I think the point you are making is very valid. There are a number of levels of this. The first thing will be that, for example, I think that the media, if the person, depending upon who he is, might tell the former president, oh, I will look into it and I'll get back to you. We maintain an independent editorial policy. And they will get back to you as their anchor or reporter or editor and say, oh, what happened here? So there is accommodation. And sometimes you might find out that maybe what the president or former president is complaining about is right. So if that is the case, then there should be an apology. But if he is wrong, then respectfully you should disagree. For example, if you remember the case of the Muntie contemners, I, for example, had the view that, remember, they called, what do they call it, the editor and the owner of the station. And I disagreed with that because, in fact, a radio station and even here, a newspaper, is not, what do they call, responsible for all the opinions published or particularly for a radio station said on the air. Because if, for example, say, I say something that is libelous and you didn't know, it's unreasonable for somebody to call tomorrow and say, oh, Adakabre, you let Atake say X and B, therefore we're taking you to prison. You wouldn't know what I was about to say. You can read my mind. So, while and people were quoting the doctrine of respondent superiority, it didn't apply there because a news anchor would not know in advance the opinions of all his guests. And so, based on that, I think the idea of at the Supreme Court, they were summoning the owners of the station and all that. Those are the kinds of terms when the Ghana Journalists Association and so-called NGOs go to stand up for what is right. And sometimes it also helps if the judiciary itself is oriented towards the development and national interest. I think that the judiciary is too inclined to agree with powerful people instead of be a balance to the powerful people or a counterweight.
Would you or Extreme Punk no? Needs FM.